Hi, I'm Dean Sage.
And I'm Jack Kervin.
And this is Show Me Your Deck,
a podcast where we explore the intersections of oracles and chakras,
using our original decks to create new insights. We are on episode 46.
And we have a guest.
We have a guest, yes. How did you find this guest?
I found this guest by the miracle of Instagram. I was scrolling around and I was served this fabulous man, and I noticed that he had his own deck of oracle cards. And so when I looked closer, I was like, we have to have him.
I mean,
so I said hello.
Kind of our thing,
and he
yeah.
replied.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to introduce Kaelan. Kaelan, can you give us like the name of your deck and, tell us just like, where did it come from? Like, so to Jack's, was intersections of elements and chakras. Mine was a 1-for-1 for the tarot. Can you kind of just give us like a little bit about like what's your deck called and what it influences that it has and kind of what's its vibe?
Yeah. So I'm Kaelan Strouse. I am an influencer and an author. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was working on my third book and was really struggling to come up with what did I really want to talk about in this new manuscript. And around the same time, I was playing with the idea of what if I created my own oracle deck for me, something that wasn't necessarily for consumption for other people, but just drawing on the traditions and the influences that mattered to me as somebody who's lived in an ashram for a number of years and traveled the world and have interacted with many different spiritual traditions. And initially, this oracle deck was going to be a deck of different deities from different traditions that I felt a connection with. But as I continued to play with this idea of what spiritual messages do I get? What are the lessons that I come up with, whether it's tied to a deity or not, tied to a specific tradition or not? It started to reveal to me these idea of 48 different spiritual lessons that I keep coming back to again and again. And as this idea just bounced around in my head, it made me realize like, hey, maybe this should actually be the topic of my third book. And so they kind of evolved simultaneously of how do I come back to those just big things, whether it's grief, or forgiveness, or learning to find peace, or accepting my body. Like, what are those things I keep coming back to? And so as the ideas got clearer, I reached out to a graphic designer I've worked with several times. He's done my first 2 book covers. He did my website. And I said, hey, is this a project you're interested in? And he said, yes. So we collaborated on this for about a year, working, bouncing back ideas with each other. And finally this summer, got to share it with the world. We did a Kickstarter in the spring. We raised well over 200% of our goal, which was fantastic. And now it's fun to get to share it with the world.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I'm curious about the numerology because 48 is a cool number. Like Jack's is 49, right? So we have the 7s there. You have more of like the 12 energy. Does any of that play into your alignment to these things? Like does numerology have anything to do with your spiritual understandings?
Honestly, I wish I had a really great esoteric reason for why the number 48. But honestly, it was 47 for a while. And then I was visiting my parents. I worked on this project a lot while my father was in his process of passing. So I kept going back to go visit him during his last few months. And on one of the trips there, I was like, actually, I think there's a card that needs to be added about reclaiming your power. So then it became 48. And then I almost bumped it up to 49, which would have made a simpatico. But it ended up sticking at 48 for the project. So no, there is not a great number for that. But I just trust the universe of what it needed to be is what it is.
That's amazing. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. My mom passed a couple of years ago, and when I was writing my deck, there was some grief that was going on from like a loss of job. I wrote a bunch of the book was written during that time period because I had free time and needed to fill it with something. But I have a whole section in the deck that deals with grief. And it's a powerful motivation. And I love that idea about the reclaiming part. I don't think that I really have thought about that piece. So that'd be awesome. Maybe that card will come up and maybe number 48 will be here with us today. We just don't know. You know what? I'm excited about this. We're going to combine all of our decks. So we're looking forward to seeing what kind of interactions and intersections come up, and it's going to be a great conversation. I think we got to get started there, Jack. What do you think?
I think so. And just to clarify, Kaelan, I have 4 decks because I am extra.
Love
like
it.
like really extra. So
We
I
almost
have
had 5.
We
I mean,
almost
to be
had
fair.
5. So I have a little tetrahedron right here that tells me which deck to pull from, and then I have a 50-sided dice that tells me which card to pull.
I love
If
it.
we roll 50, then I will let you choose randomly whichever card you want.
Beautiful.
That still has not happened.
It has not happened.
That has
No.
not happened. Okay, so here we go. The tetrahedron of doom says, ha ha ha, deck number 1, my sassy deck. These will be the projections of joy. Yes. So the idea here is that the professions from the book, I wanted there to be suggestions to go with those so that you would, have ideas for taking a concept and acting upon it. So this isn't just a profession of joy; it's an actual projection of it out into the world. So this is the deck that tends to be the sassiest. So we'll see.
It's actually
what she
the
has to
more
say.
most oracle of your decks, as far as like putting like a evocative message out for somebody to respond to, like trying to create like that tension point.
Well, we're going to get card number 40. So let's come over here to 40. It's going to be pretty high up. So that's going to be the third eye. And as it intersects with the solar plexus. So this is blue with yellow, water with fire. I see with I do. So, okay. Prioritize your polish. Create inviolable sessions, eliminate distractions, refine your expertise. Again, prioritize your polish. Create inviolable sessions, eliminate distractions, refine your expertise.
So we have I see and I do, right? So we've got
I see and I do.
action
Taking
up top.
action.
Kaelan, like, because this is the first time you've heard, any of this. I'm just curious, like, what's sort of your immediate reaction when you hear this projection?
So we have the third eye and we've got our belly center. So for me, I feel like that's a combination about both insight and action. As you said, I see and I do, that ability to discern or to connect with something beyond yourself, to have clarity, and then not to just live in that realm of thinking about it or observing it, but then to actually enact it in the world and to create change or to do what you would like to do with it.
Yes, exactly so. And the haiku for this one actually focuses, this one came up recently. This is the one about the steam engine and the idea of coming back around over and over and refining something until it gets more and more efficient. So that you might start with a steam engine, but that you end with a turbine that's nuclear powered. The idea that you have an idea, but you have to actually act on it and do it over and over and over until you figure out its best form. So the dream, the idea is beautiful, but you can't just let it sit in your mind. It has to come out and be birthed by your choices, by your actions, so that the world can actually benefit from it. Mm-hmm. So the idea of prioritizing your polish. Sometimes people will, I think this was a response to somebody at some point telling me that I had to, look at what tools I had in my toolbox or something like that. And it was right when I was working on this intersection anyway, and it just kind of transmorphed into these other poetic ideas about taking action. And in terms of creating inviolable sessions, there are so many distractions in this world that want to keep you from acting on your dreams and your ideas. There are times when you will need to put turn all your ringers off, turn the lights off, and simply not be accessible while you work on whatever it is you need to do. Because it isn't just for yourself.
Kaelan, I know that body positivity is like kind of a big thing for your Instagram. Obviously, I think it projects that image very well. And I know that you've brought that into your deck. Do you kind of feel any of that energy in here? Because I'm kind of getting a little bit of with the I see, like the seeing yourself and the doing. Like I think that there can be those moments where it's hard to get your motivation to go when you're seeing maybe incorrectly. So like if this chakra was more like of a block for you, like I'm kind of getting this sense that there's something in the way of like true seeing, right? Like true understanding, and how that can interrupt the ability to do. Like I'm just kind of curious, does any of that kind of resonate with you in your deck and your ideas?
I mean, I think one of the gifts and also challenges of the human experiences are limitations in vision. We can only see so much, that we are by the very nature of taking these physical incarnations in these bodies, we are choosing to be limited. We are choosing to not be able to see all. We are choosing to have our vision clouded. And the thing about, what's the old saying? You don't know what you don't know. We can't see the ways we're blocked. We can't see the ways where we are being limited in our perception. So yeah, maybe something very much of the body that's preventing you from viewing what you need next. I mean, the thing that kind of comes up for me is the importance of going to stillness every day. Because when we are so busy and we are constantly doing and we're constantly being distracted by all the bells and alerts and dings and whooshes, it's really hard to get that discernment about next steps. And I know for myself, when I take that time to go into stillness, into silence for even 30 minutes, how much more clarity comes and how much a way usually just presents itself without me having to do a lot of discernment to try and figure out where I'm blocked, but just saying, okay, universe, open it up for me. I'm going to get out of the way and let something come through.
I love that. And I think it really, for this reading, kind of sets us in an interesting place, because normally when I do comes up, right, it's all about action. It's all about putting things out in the world. And I love that idea of the I see element kind of being like, wait, pause, sit here for a second, let the, let the fire burn, but let it fuel, you in stillness, in silence for a minute, and kind of create that alignment. We, like, often in a reading, we will get all 7 chakras. So we'll kind of get an alignment out of our readings, which is, interesting and fun. But, when you're focusing on different chakras, it's easy to kind of overstimulate them, right? And get them out of control, right? Overly open, too much energy flowing, and they kind of disrupt and distract things. So no, I love this idea of stillness. Jack, I mean, what do you think about this kind of opening messages being, the ability to kind of open your, or unblock your third eye, using the stillness of I do rather than the action of I do?
Oh yeah, and that's even, built into the suggestion here is to, create that space that's just for you, so you can take the time you need to do or not do whatever is necessary to accomplish your goal. And sometimes your goal can just be still. I mean, that in and of itself is a challenge. I would like to think that lots of people understand how difficult it is to fall asleep because your brain won't stop.
Me and my 7 pills to fall asleep. Yes.
So, there's a lot to be said for being able to discern when it's appropriate to act and when it's appropriate to consider.
Well, your image there with the steam engine, like the process of innovation is moments of stillness and of mental activity, and then it's moments of doing, and physical activity, but you need the consideration of where your fire goes. And I think that's the IC part, kind of directing and causing that stillness and then that action.
So as far as the context goes for the next 4 cards coming up, it sounds like there is the reminder here that you have to be aware of and what's the word I want? Specific about how you're going to use and direct your intention. So whichever cards come up next, all of them are beautiful. Consider how they all work together and when it's important to rest and when it's important to work.
Yeah, I feel like this reading, we're going to build a little machine, a little active item. Like it's a project. It's a project that we all get to work on together. I'm excited because up next comes Kaelan's cards. So Kaelan, how do you prefer to draw your cards? Do you like, shuffle? Do you do it random? Like, how do you interact with your deck when you're choosing cards?
Yeah, for me, I just try to go into that open, faultless, connected space and shuffle, allow something to either pull me or jump out of the deck, or if it's not doing any of that, then I just say, all right, universe, let me just open it and see which one reveals itself.
Awesome. Well, we're excited. Why don't you go ahead and pull one of your cards and go ahead and describe it to us. We do have a YouTube where we'll try to put an image up. So if you want to see the prettiness of the deck for real, you can go to the YouTube channel. But if you can just kind of give us a little, audio glimpse of what you've got in front of you.
So I'll show you guys. We've got enjoy simplicity. And so we have a person sitting on a beautiful balcony at sunset, somewhere tropical, watching the sky turn to magentas and oranges while sipping some tea, and a little sloth hangs out nearby, hanging from the canopy. So I love this one. I love the idea of seeking simplicity because I don't know about y'all, but I feel like the world that I've experienced living in America in the 21st century has always been so much about busyness, like buy this thing, accumulate more, go to all these places, travel more, work more, hustle more. And I don't see a big celebration of just quiet, simple existence. But I also know for myself how important those times are and how fulfilling they are. Like I've recently taken this personal dedication to try and watch the sunset as many days of the week as I can, to take my dogs outside, go to a park, just sit down and watch the sky change colors, and how meaningful and profound that is for me. So when we're tying this into that first reading of I see and then I do, I would say kind of what we were just talking about. I'm moving into that quieter, more still, more simple place. Removing the clutter, removing the distractions, and saying, maybe I should stop doing, I should stop inputting all this information and just come to a place of simpleness and let the answer reveal itself from there.
It's interesting with the two, the cards are so very contrasting, and yet they absolutely work together, because here you have a reminder from Kaelan's cards that you have to make room and time for and space for yourself and these sensual experiences, and the sloth just moving slowly and going at a more carefree rate so that you can rest, so that you can be effective. These aren't arguing against each other. They're actually reminding each other about each other. You want to be an effective person, but you can't work all the time. You can be going all the time. And yet if you are sloth all the time, nothing will get done. But you do need both.
And I'll add on to that too, multitasking. Like everybody thinks they're so good at multitasking, but brain science shows that we actually can't. You can really only do one thing at a time. And so how do we, even if you're somebody who's highly productive, even if you're somebody who's managing a very complex project, how do you break it down into simple, task-oriented, let me get clear, let me choose my action, but let me do it from a place of stillness, quiet, simplicity, rather than from chaos or trying to juggle 50 things at once.
I actually, some people will brag about how good they are about multitasking. I really make it a point to brag about how bad I am at it, because I don't want people bothering me. It's like, quite literally, just the other day, I was trying to read something and my boyfriend started talking to me. And not only did I not know what he was talking about, I couldn't remember what I was doing. So I really am single-minded and single-focused. I really cannot and do not want to multitask.
I relate to that. Like similarly, there's that myth of the zero inbox where if I just get really good at replying to people, then my inbox will be at zero. But in reality, the better you get at replying, the more people expect a reply. So I'm just on the opposite. I'm like, I'm really bad at emails. You'll get a response within the week.
Mm-hmm.
What a lovely life you two lead.
He's an admin.
and I'm an interim director at the moment, so I get emails every minute that require attention, but that's fine. But no, even bringing in my personal stuff. Maybe we'll talk about this in the members segment, but there's a sense here of the simplicity is also about kind of reduction and minimalism. Kaelan, I don't know if this is something that came up for you in kind of your spiritual studies, but there's a book that I kind of go back to again and again, The Art of Happiness. And, the idea that if you can accept that you are where you're supposed to be right now, you can achieve what people call happiness, but is really peace. I think there's a huge mistaking, because happiness is not joy. Joy is something that happens, right? It's there. We have it. It's moments. It's wonderful, but we aren't supposed to be joyous all the time. We're supposed to be happy or at peace all the time. And there's just the beauty of your card, I think, kind of just brings that in as that moment of peace and sustainability. And, as we have this moment of stillness, right, from Jack's card, we've got this idea of bring it down to elements. And I also love the colors, Jack. Did you notice that the sunset kind of mimics the colors of your card?
Mm-hmm.
You know, with the fire and then the cooler tones.
It's a beautiful deck.
Thank you. I know, I love that you bring that up. And when I was creating my Oracle deck, card 1 is Seek Peace. And I chose it as card 1 because I feel like the spiritual journey really has to start from that place of saying, hey, I've been pursuing happiness in all the wrong places. And I need to step off the treadmill, and I need to choose to start from a place of peace, because that is the beginning of the journey, is saying, I can't deal with all this anymore. I need to calm down. I need to find quiet. I need to find a place to begin from. And then the last card of the deck that I told you earlier about adding in reclaiming your power last minute, but I made that 47 because I wanted the last card of the deck to be just be. You've gone through this whole adventure. You've learned all these lessons. You've tried all these things. Come back to just being. And what you said, I think, is exactly right. It's not about necessarily even joy. It's about the contentment with this moment. It's just saying, this here is enough. What I have is enough. And that is available to me every moment of every day, no matter what's going on. Can I just appreciate what's right here and find the acceptance of it?
Just be. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, we have, I do. And I think Jack and I, we're both doers. We are both doers. We have things that we get out there and we do, and we move. And I think even my boss is trying to tell me something about this recently. I'm very action orientated. I want to get it done. I'm a process improvement specialist. Like that's what I do, is I improve things. I make them better. I make them flow better, right? Movement. And like, there's this also sense of, part of I do is I sit in stillness. I reclaim my power. We reignite the fire through the peaceful moments, through the stillness, through the peace that we attain by just being and aligning. And then, yes, we can take action from there. We absolutely can.
And the quiet times, the rest also gives you time to recalibrate and reconsider if you're in the right direction, if the method is correct, if it's healthy, if it's good for you and anybody else. So another reason it's important to take this time is to consider whether what you're doing is actually what needs to be done.
I had a mentor once who used to say to me, I'm too busy to know if I'm happy. And I remember when he would say that, I'd be like, there's something really wrong with that. Because when we're just constantly acting, when we're constantly making choices and doing, but are disconnected from our internal state, that's really not being productive. That's really distraction. That's really saying, hey, there's something I don't want to face, so let me just distract myself by keep making things, doing things, going places, as opposed to making choices based on deep fulfillment and what will bring us lasting happiness.
Well, and it reduces you to an automaton too. If you're mindlessly doing and not considering if it's what needs to be done, then that can actually be quite dangerous if it's writ large across an entire culture. The situations in our world today can sometimes feel like automatons just following orders. And so we have to be very mindful and careful about what we're putting our energy into.
Scrolling. I'm just getting an image of scrolling out of all of this, and it's so easy. The first time I discovered Instagram Reels, I started scrolling and like 4 hours disappeared. Yeah, my spouse and I were sitting there just, we weren't TikTokers, that we didn't get in on that. I think we're too old of a millennial to like have jumped into that. And so Reels was the first time that I discovered this sort of instant dopamine trickle that they had created. And, 4 hours, just literally the two of us just staring at my iPad for 4 hours and realizing, oh my goodness, this is dangerous.
Okay, so in your defense, if any of it was kitten videos, that might be okay.
No, there was a lot of kitten videos.
Okay, all right, so it's not 4 hours, it's more like 2 hours.
Yes, it's cat hours.
If half of it is kitten videos, then that's actual therapy. So.
Oh my goodness, kitten magic!
We've got kitten magic too.
She is relentless about wanting me to pat her butt while I talk. So yes, she's here.
Oh, my kata is like, she comes up to me and it's like, please sir, may I have some butt pats?
Yes, all day long if I let her.
Yeah. So this is fabulous. I love this conversation. Dean, are you going to give us the third card?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get into it. All right, let's see. So, just, I've talked about it before, but I get like a tingling in my third eye when I'm pulling cards. And, I don't think there's like a card god that, determines which card I pick, but I think that there is sort of, confluences of energy that bring certain things to the surface. So I kind of get a sense of which card to draw, and it's pretty accurate. When I'm doing readings for other people, I get sort of, a good vibe for them. So I have
my dice just jump off the table. And I have to go ahead
your dice is like your fairy deck. We try the original version of this show. Jack was going to use a fairy deck, and we tried to do like a mock episode, and
the cards kept falling out and running away.
Well, you couldn't even find it. Like it scampered off completely, and we found it like 2 hours later.
Somewhere. Yes.
So we will pull the fairy deck out for like a special episode, but we have to be prepared.
Exactly.
Heathens.
The mischief makers.
All right, so I have pulled the 10 of seeds. So this is the root chakra, and this is a 10 in the tarot. So there's a sense of completeness, of coming home, of generational stuff. And so this is your seeds given to others will grow for generations. Your seeds given to others will grow for generations.
My immediate gut reaction to that is that the way you act and think and see and rest and do and don't do now has an ongoing effect across the ages, and it's really important for you to be very aware of what you're doing and why.
When you were discussing the automatons, I was thinking about so many of these people with power in our world who are constantly doing things like let's take Elon Musk, for example. Do they ever stop and actually think, is this for the betterment of future generations, or am I just doing things because I'm enjoying the chaos, or I'm enjoying, living in my little ketamine fantasy or whatever? Like, are we actually coming from a place of stillness and centeredness when we make choices, realizing that our actions ripple out, they affect other people, they affect future generations, they affect the planet? And are we choosing to use our life force well toward the benefit of others?
Mm-hmm. Amen. I feel that one.
Well, you brought up the point of, where do you put your energy, your direction? And I'm reminded of Jurassic Park, just, because obviously another movie came out, and so it's at the front of my mind. But, the Jeff Goldblum's like, you're so busy trying to see if you can that you need to stop and think if you should.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Amen. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
And I think that's very relevant for this reading because, we've brought in the root, right? We've brought in groundedness. We've brought in the sense of safety and security, or the fear that comes with not feeling that. So, as you have this moment of stillness, that there is this, asking you to ground yourself, and the consideration, again, there's a lot of stillness and consideration to this thing, but consider what your seeds, right? The things that you're cultivating right now, how are they going to be transferred forward? And, it's an interesting life. Kaelan, I don't know about you. Jack and I are probably never going to have kids and generativity in that kind of regard. So our work, right? This podcast, the decks, the books, like those are our seeds that will go forward. And, that's, if anything's going to affect a future generation, it's going to be those things for us. But, as you're listening to this could be talking about your children. It could be talking about the legacy that you're leaving behind. We leave legacies everywhere with work, with friends, with the impact on strangers, right? Just random strangers. You can have that sort of rippling effect on others. So I think there's careful consideration here because those ripples happen regardless, and they could be good, they could be bad. They could be positive energy. They could be negative energy. They could work to build on others, or they could work to cancel out others. And so part of what is happening right now is there is a moment of doing approaching. However, sit in stillness, find peace, and then think about what it is that you want to project. What do you want to ripple outward into the world? How do you want that to go?
Because another word for that is karma. Like every action you undertake is creating karmas in the world that you will then have to later experience the fruits of those actions. So are those actions you really want to be making?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever told you about this particular story, Dean. When I was living in Manhattan, I don't know why people feel like they can just come up and talk to me, but they do. So, I mean, that can be good or bad. It's gone both ways. But this was a good interaction. And I was taking the train to, I think, go to dance rehearsal or something. And I was carrying a chair with me, a folding chair. And of course, that, begs questions. People want to know why I'm walking around with a folding chair. So this guy starts talking to me, and I don't remember the verbatim conversation, but ultimately it came around to him finding out that I was a dancer and I pursued this and blah, 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 blah. And so I asked him what he wanted to do, and he said he wanted to draw. And I was like, oh, well, do you have anything to show me? He's like, oh, I've never done it. I just like to do it. I want to do it. And we had this conversation about him applying for art school. And he's like, well, I'm not, I'm not Picasso or anything. And I was like, they don't want you to be Picasso. If you were Picasso, they wouldn't have anything to teach you. They need you to be a student. And if it's what you want to do, then you need to do it. And like, I saw like fires going on in his eyes and everything. And I never saw him again, but I really would love the idea that I created an artist that day. That would be really cool karma. That would have been a nice way to, create a legacy for somebody that I don't know. That would be really beautiful to find out.
Yeah. So an example of your action, moving somebody into joy, into peace, into expansiveness, which ideally I feel like is the best type of actions we can take, is how did we expand the good feelings in the world a little bit more?
Yeah. Trying to leave people in places better than you find them, right?
Amen.
Kaelan, in your deck, does karma come up? I know you talked about your experience with ashram and some intersections. I forget which type of Buddhism you mentioned, but you have intersections with some of those cultural, spiritual traditions. Is that something that came out for you in your deck, or did you embody that in different ways?
Both it did and it didn't. That the concepts are absolutely there, but one of the things that I really tried to do with this deck and the accompanying book, because it really is a standalone book, it isn't meant to just be like a couple sentences for each card, was this idea of reclaiming spirituality from any one tradition. And so I did my best to remove any Sanskrit or Tibetan or spiritual terms that are tied to any one specific tradition, because I really wanted this to be coming from a place of universality and reclaiming spirituality, of saying you can be spiritual no matter where you're from, what you practice, what you do. You don't have to go to a monastery. You don't need to wear robes. You don't need to induct yourself into a specific tradition that is available to anybody. So I try to avoid naming names with specific practices or viewpoints, but it's very much embedded into it. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the thing that Jack and I kind of approach with this is the idea of appropriation. And, we've both been influenced by the chakra system in our own ways for, our lives. I interact with Zen Buddhism. That's kind of one of the things that has spoken to me. I don't have a particular tradition that I follow, but I like some of the things that come out of that area of spirituality. But it is a hard thing to, have a resonance with a culture that isn't your own. And to try to have an expression, an artistic, spiritual expression that pulls upon that without trying to, appropriate it or take it in the wrong direction. I love the idea of what you're saying of kind of opening it up and making it, available to the whole.
Yeah, because one of the things that's really frustrated me is that as a person, I was born outside of Chicago. I'm white. My ancestors would probably be Northern European, Germanic, Celtic. I don't have a tradition that is indigenous to me. I was raised Christian, but that's not the religion of my ancestors. And feeling like at the best, I would only ever be a guest in somebody else's house. And no matter what tradition I went to, it will never be mine because of where I was born. And what a thing that is to tell somebody that they will never be able to access the depth of spirituality as somebody born in Tibet or somebody born in Peru. And to say, I'm sorry, but I think that's bullshit. I think spirituality is available to everybody. And you look at traditions, like you look at Hinduism, for example. Hindus don't typically call themselves Hindus because it's a term given to them by the Brits. And Hindu literally means of the Indus Valley. The term that they use translates to mean eternal truth. That it doesn't matter when you're practicing, where you are, who you are, there are eternal truths that exist out there in the atmosphere that if you get quiet and still, you can access them. So chakras, for example, plenty of different spiritual traditions have talked about energetic centers or wheels existing in our energetic body. But it is not something that is tied to one tradition. Each one has a different version. Some say there's 6, some say there's 8, some say there's 7, some say there's 14. It doesn't really matter. It's you find those things that exist out there and uncover them for yourself and know them to be true because of your experience, rather than waiting for a gatekeeper to tell you that you have permission, and without appropriating somebody else's tradition, but just finding your own truth.
It's interesting because when you talk about, universal truths, it's we as groups of people who politicize identity and then create labels that then lead to gatekeeping, and trying to be very sensitive about cultural appropriation. In my book and in my cards, I use the Indian names, the Sanskrit names for the chakras, but in the novel I'm writing, I absolutely do not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the distinction for me was that the book that goes with the class that then birthed these cards was specifically about a spiritual experience with movement, whereas the novel is something I'm making specifically for a commercial purpose, and I wanted to make a distinction there to make sure that people didn't feel offended. And yet there is the universality of truth, and it doesn't matter how it's branded from the perspective of truth, but it does matter from the perspective of culture. And it's an interesting intersection to try to meet the truth without undermining the people who helped describe the truth in the way that you're appreciating it.
Yeah, totally.
I think there's an interesting sort of twist turn here, which is very serendipitous, where Kaelan's deck sort of speaks to this idea of, getting spirituality from everywhere, the eternal truths, being able to kind of bring things in. I think that the reading itself with this 10 of seeds coming up is saying, just as much as you're putting seeds out, you are taking seeds in, right? You are the product of seeds that have multiplied through generations. And I think, this reading is saying, maybe this is the focus, right? Maybe this is where you need to focus your energy, is what traditions, what is speaking to you, what is helping create you in this moment, and how are you able to kind of use the stillness and the consideration of that to bring in traditions, right? To bring in seeds to yourself, so that then you have something to spread outward. Maybe this is a moment of pause to say, what is it that I believe? What is it that I feel? And how does this affect me in my present moment?
You get to create your own tradition, create your own expression of that truth that then will go on and influence somebody else later. You're a product of influence, and you are an influence.
Mm-hmm.
I want Kaelan's deck.
Yes. Give us another card.
Well, this next one seems really perfect. So this one says, let your body move you. And it's a depiction of a person swinging through the forest at night off of tree vines under the moon. And for me, this card is all about somatic wisdom. What are not the things that we learn through our mind, but what are the things revealed through our body? What are the things we feel to be true in our gut, in our hearts, in our loins, in our elbows? And so letting go of the idea that the head is supreme, that our mind is better than the body, and reclaiming the wisdom that is inherent in our physical forms. So I think this beautifully ties into the conversation we were just having.
Yeah, the way instinct can inform you, that, and you hear it when you're still.
Mm-hmm. Or even in motion. So like this card is very active. They're moving through the forest. I know for myself, I've learned things through moving my body. I've learned things through dance. I've learned things through Tai Chi, through lifting weights, through swimming, through running. That my body has taught me things, not just in stillness, but in motion. And so if we tie back to the very first card that we pulled for this reading of I see and then I do, one might even argue that the discernment process, the learning process doesn't stop after you've taken that moment of stillness, but that you continue to learn, you continue to check in with yourself, you continue to reveal things, even in the action, if you're being present to your embodied experience.
This is so interesting because the cards keep going back and forth between doing and not doing, and resting and then working and then playing and then sleeping. And so there's this constant dynamic living energy that comes in waves and forces, and there's ups and downs and yin and yang. And here we have a card that's now moving again, but playfully, joyfully, and in a detached intellectual way, the way that the gut knows, the second chakra, the way that, you've got the second brain. It's not first brain in your head, but the second brain's down in your torso, and just letting it think a little bit too, while you're having a good time, while you're enjoying the somatic experience of being a physical being as well as a spiritual being.
And also just highlighting it, how odd it is that we as humans are constantly in the state of doership. When you look at any other animal on this planet, they are in active mode where they're hunting, food gathering, do what they need, but the vast majority of their time is spent in play or rest or just being. We as humans are really bad at that.
Yeah.
Well, I like that we get some very third chakral energy, right, from the movement of the body and the core, right? So we talk about this a lot, like your core muscles allow you to move, right? Without them, you cannot move. When you have surgery on your abdomen, you are very, very much not moving for a little bit. And when you do, it costs you in pain. So we have that kind of thing. But I think you talk about the somatic knowing, and yes, I mean, Western philosophical tradition, it absolutely set us on the path of I think is better than I feel. And that the basis of cognition is somehow intellectual thinking, somehow logical reasoning is the basis of consciousness. But we look at animals. Animals have consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And we even go back to the ancient Greeks. They believed that a healthy mind and a healthy body were inseparable, that if you did not develop your body, the mind would not function well. And I think it's hysterical. I never knew about this in history classes, but when I went to Athens and was checking out a couple of museums there, I didn't realize that they would do busts of the philosophers, where it was a marble column, and on the top was their head, and then in the middle of the column was their genitals. It was like, let's represent these men by both their heads. Like this idea of the body is not separate from intelligence.
I think that's readily missed in our culture, but we have studies, we have medical studies that prove that body awareness and bodily health drastically affect our mental capabilities and our mental well-being. And I think also, as we go through it, even the brain is a reaction engine. The brain has the ability to do conscious logical thought, but most of the time it's instinctual reaction. It's a reactive engine that says, "Oh, I know this. I'm going to do this because that's what I've trained myself to do." Versus, if we had to think about every action we took in our body, it would be exhausting.
Anything else done? I don't multitask. So, we're either digesting this fruit or we're like not.
The funny part is that the body is actually very good at multitasking. Mm-hmm. Being able to throw a baseball, like we're trying to teach robots to do some of these things and trying to break it down in the same way our body does. We can just see a ball in the air and figure out where to go to catch it. And we're doing trigonometry in our heads without even knowing it.
One of my favorite things to talk about with the bodily processing and intelligence is that our senses take in so much information, but we consciously process 0.0012% of the data that our senses are taking in. And so when your gut is telling you something, when your heart is telling you something, when your body's telling you something, it is very much aware of something that it's observed that you did not get that data about.
You just said heart, and I find it very interesting that we haven't had the heart chakra yet, even though we've been dancing around it a little bit. We also haven't had the throat chakra, right? So we haven't had any real discussion moments, there's been a lot of contemplation with what we put together, but I find it interesting that you mentioned the heart, because that is sort of the third logical, gut, and then feeling, even though for, like the feelings are in the gut, in according to the chakral system, there is that sort of where peace flows from, really comes from the heart, where joy and sadness flows from the heart. And that's a huge part of our lives. I mean, we've talked about grief. I think on the pre-show, we talked a little bit about grief. That changes the brain. What the heart experiences changes, the very makeup of our physical being, and for the better or for the worse, right? You can go both ways with it. So I do find, we'll see. We've got one card left, so we could still get the heart, but it's interesting that we're kind of dancing around it. I think for me, what that's saying is that we need to allow that to exist as it is for us right now, and the contemplation and the stillness and the action are kind of happening around it. So in this reading, we're looking at what we maybe believe, how it influences us, but we're allowing the peace to kind of settle through. We're not trying to actively, we're not meditating for peace right now. We're meditating for understanding, for alignment. We're not just kind of going out there and trying to kind of force ourselves into a peaceful, happy state. I think we're taking care of the things that influence our ability to have that peace in that present moment.
Totally.
Shall I roll?
You shall roll.
Okay, the tetrahedron of doom says deck number. Well, okay, we're staying with deck number 1.
Okay.
All right. Number 18. Well, okay. All right. So now, okay. All right. So we start with blue on yellow, and now we've got yellow on blue.
Of course.
So we get the inverse. All right. Oh, wow. This is cool. All right. You ready? Step to it, honey. You thought enough now. Define the milestones. Start walking last Monday. Step to it, honey. You thought enough now. Define the milestones. Start walking last Monday. Well, here we go back and forth on action and inaction and thinking and not thinking and doing and not doing. Well, now it's time to go. So once you've done this thinking, once you've done this considering, once you are sure that your potential influence for 10 generations is sound, once you understand everything that you need to do, it's now you need to do it. Whatever it is, time to go.
Yeah, and one of the things I often think in my own spiritual work is, if something's true, so is its opposite. And so we've just spent a lot of time discussing the importance of taking time to move from a place of consciousness and alignment. But the opposite can also be true if you think too much. Just go do. Just be in your body, go experience. Don't overthink it, just go.
It's an interesting reading because it's about finding the right balance between awareness and action to be productive, not productive, but effective. Let's call it effective. Because I don't think we always need to be productive per the conversation we just had, but we do want to be effective.
I want to pick up that productivity thing there because that's timely. I was just having this conversation with our dear friend Lisa, and she kind of used the "I need to be productive right now" statement, and I was like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that statement. That's not the right thing to say to yourself. And then at the same time, she's doing very productive things, and her focus needs to be on the things that are in front of her right now. But because she wasn't doing classic things, like the standard things, she used this word productivity. But what's funny is that I used the same word myself, and she was admonishing me a few weeks ago when I said, I want to be more productive with my creativity. I want to establish times to be creative. I want to give myself space to be creative. I want it to not just sort of happen when it happens, but I want to try to give it, a moment in time for it to happen. And so this productivity word is a very, very interesting and challenging word for me, because I think there's such a judgment to it in our culture as far as what is productive. But if you just take it to its roots, it's not a bad word. It's not a bad concept. And, that's, I think, that interesting, challenging thing about, again, Western culture, like we were talking, there's so many things that have been co-opted and taken away from us. And, it can stymie you, just the way that you talk about yourself. Like, we're in the moment of stop thinking, go do, right? That self-talk, that self-language that we use to describe what we're doing, it can drastically affect the outcome of what's happening.
Well, productivity ends up being kind of I don't want to say it's a bad word, but it's kind of a tainted word because of capitalism. Especially if you don't even own what you've produced. Somebody else owns it, or somebody else controls it, or somebody else leases it from you, and you don't even get to call it completely yours anymore. But then you look at a musician like Prince. You want to talk about productivity. They finally sawed the vault open. There is enough music in there to release a new album every year for 300 years. And
Wow.
He already released like 60 albums while he was alive. That is productivity and creativity. And he's notorious for owning his stuff. That was why he changed his name to a symbol in the first place, was to fight Warner Brothers. So productivity and creativity and ownership can all come together, and you don't have to be Prince to accomplish it, but just be aware of the way in which you're even using the word toward yourself. I mean, for our dear friend Lisa to say, I need to be productive now, knowing that Lisa needs to be healing. No. The best productivity you can have right now is to heal and become a whole person, and then go out and live your best life. And then that is productive.
There was a study done with art students around productivity and outcome. They broke a class of art students into two groups. One had to only produce 2 works of art to submit at the end of the semester that would then be reviewed by a panel of professional artists. The other group were told, we don't care about the outcome. We just need you to create 5 pieces of artwork each week. And then at the end of the semester, you can turn in whatever 2 you like best and to be reviewed. And very similar to what you were just saying about Prince, what they found is that universally, the people who were just creating to create and producing a lot out of just the fun, not the expectations of creating something meaningful, ended up with far higher rankings than the people only creating to create something meaningful or perfect or something that they anticipated having being reviewed. And so tying that back to our conversation, what happens when we come from a place of peace, a place of joy, a place of contentment, and put things out in the world because we feel called to, because it inspires us, because we're having fun with it, rather than feeling like we have to be productive, like we have to do something meaningful, like we have to make something that's going to make an impact. What if we just do without overthinking it, but coming from peace and clarity?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you end up with people like, Michelangelo and these other greats who were prolific. And look what they were prolific with. That's not to say that everybody has to be a Michelangelo, but he was playing. He was having a good time.
Except with the Sistine Chapel. He did not enjoy the Sistine Chapel.
No, he did not enjoy that. But, I bet he enjoyed David. I know I did. How you doing?
Oh my gosh. Just total side note. Have you seen the hard eyes thing with the David statue?
The heart eyes shaped like a heart?
Yeah. I haven't got into it, but someone posted like it was a Mandela effect, that the statue of David has hard eyes, and most people are like, no, it doesn't. And I haven't looked to see if AI did it or not, but it's right. Funny. It's funny because the reason I think I bring it up right now is that there's so many different ways to view what is happening, and then to view something like a work of art. Like you talked about, people are going to judge this work of art, and I'm going to create this work of art to be judged. I mean, there's thousands of ways to look at anything that is produced. There's thousands of ways to look at it, and some people will really enjoy it, and some people will absolutely despise it. And that you have to not let that get you right now. So I think that's kind of like with this final card, you can't let the ideas and thoughts and connections of others keep you from doing what you need to do now. Like, trust your body. When I kind of get into my creativity, there's a bodily sensation to it. And, I used to try to wait for the ecstatic state to come. I'm bipolar, and I've had hypomania that I dealt with for many, many years. And there were times where it was incredibly productive, but it's not healthy.
It's not sustainable.
No. And it sort of tainted sort of hypomanic creativity, because it was like, I was waiting to be seized by the muse. And so I would just sort of sit there and poke at it, waiting to be, embodied. And it just, was not going to come. It wasn't going to be there. So I think we have this larger sort of sense of what are we really relating to? Like, what is really driving us? What is the core? We've talked about root metaphors. What is the core identity that makes up me? What is the tradition that makes up me? What are my seeds? What have I inherited? What will I pass on? And then now do it, Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a call here at the end of this. Jack, you talked about owning your production. Your creativity is the one thing you can own. Right. We all have a book. Jack has 4 decks because Jack is an overachiever.
Extra.
Like we all have these things. We have this podcast right now together. These are things that we collectively own and have, the ability to control how they flow. That's something powerful in the midst of a capitalist life. Where a lot of your time is not spent doing something that you own, unless you're Jack and you just refuse to work for anybody.
I don't work for other people. No. I've tried it. It's not for me.
I'm right with you, buddy. I feel the same way.
At my last job, what I discovered was that I am very, very hireable. I am not very employable.
Kaelan, I'll give you the last sort of thought here. We've pulled these 5 cards. We've kind of gone on this journey. We found some intersections and things like that. What's kind of your final thought about this?
Tying this back to the idea of a human experience, like often what people have historically said is we're the thinking animals, which I disagree with. I think animals have a lot more thinking than we give them credit for. But I think there is this beautiful dance that we're constantly doing between our heads and our bodies. And it's not to say that one is superior to the other, but to just be aware of both. Be aware of what do our animal selves, what do our embodied selves say? What does our consciousness say? What does our minds say? And to appreciate the totality of both, that it isn't just either or, but to gain true wisdom and to make right action in the world, that we should be coming from a place of integration rather than just separate aspects of self, but to just bring our whole self in its beautiful, complex form forward in everything we do.
Well, thank you for listening. We do have a members only Patreon. It's patreon.com/DeanStageMedia. You can go and hear longer episodes where we talk about how the reading impacted us. And of course, with our dear guest, we had even more discussion about impacts and how our lives were kind of affected by what we read. What did we think of it personally? We do have a YouTube. It's Show Your Deck on YouTube. You can see the pretty cards and the pretty colors that we talk about as we talk about them. Our books and our decks are available at showyourdeck.com. Jack, where can we find you?
I'm at 49 Haiku. So on the intrawebs, that would be the number 4, the number 9, HAIKU.com. And on Instagram, it would be at 49 Haiku.
I'm Dean Sage Media. Find me if you dare. And Kaelan, how do we find you?
If you dare. I love that. My main website is ecstaticself.com. You can find all my links to everything there, but I'm on YouTube at Ecstatic Self, Instagram, Kaelan Ecstatic Self. I host retreats. I work with people one-on-one. So feel free to reach out and say hi.
We do have a show's Instagram. It's at your deck, and we will say goodbye.